Hi, Alex Polyak here. In late March 2026, an amazing story came to light. A man in Scotland visited a local secondhand market and bought an old Xbox 360 for just £5. However, this wasn't just any console, it was a development kit specifically intended for game developers. In this case, the unit came from Rockstar North, the famous studio behind the Grand Theft Auto series. After the purchase, the buyer discovered that the console still contained an actual beta build, GTA 4. He shared the files with the gaming community, for which we owe him a huge thank you, and now we know more about what the game looked like at a certain stage of development. Following the emergence of this beta build, players began actively sharing and discussing their findings. In this video, we'll go over the most interesting things discovered so far. But first, I want to pay tribute to all the users involved in digging through the game files. It is their specific discoveries that I'm going to talk about now. So, the community got its hands on a late build dated autumn 2007, which is about 6 months before the game's official release. While nothing massive has been found in the files yet, there are plenty of intriguing details that true fans of the game will appreciate. For example, one image shows a rectangular radar. It's possible the developers were considering this style long before they started working on GTA 5. There is also an unusual protagonist model that doesn't look like Nico. It's intriguing, though it's possible the developers were just using a placeholder skin at the time. Let's look at the weapons. A 9mm silenced pistol was originally intended for the game. In my opinion, this would have fit Nico and the overall atmosphere of the game perfectly. I've thought about this for a long time, and I'm glad to see that this weapon was actually planned. However, it's a shame it was never officially implemented. The police nightstick is another item that would have fit well, especially since law enforcement is everywhere in Liberty City. On the other hand, the cut golf club might not have paired well with Nico's persona. Interestingly, golf was later introduced in the Ballad of Gay Tony, and using a club as a weapon became possible in GTA 5. Instead of the classic AK-47, the build features what is presumably a Yugoslavian Zastava version. This would have been a nice touch for Nico given his background in the Balkan Wars, though such a weapon might have felt slightly out of place in Liberty City. The M4 model is similar to the final version, but it still has noticeable differences in the sight and the grip area. A camera was also found in the files, featuring a zoom function. Additionally, references to a flamethrower and a minigun have been preserved. These weren't all the weapon-related finds, but they are probably the most interesting ones. Now, let's talk about other objects. For instance, various mobile phone models were discovered, including standard candy bar phones, flip phones, and even tiny miniature versions. Besides that, the files contain several unused items for pedestrians, such as a banana, a closed umbrella, a handheld mirror for female NPCs, and other miscellaneous things. The person who found these even tried to visualize how they might have looked in-game. In my opinion, these are truly interesting details that would have made the city feel even more alive and diverse. Skis were also found, though it's hard to say anything specific about them just yet. We'll get back to the various objects later, but for now, let's take a look at the vehicles, as there's some cool stuff there too. Players found the model and textures for the ferry, the very one seen in the official trailer. Originally, players were supposed to be able to travel from one part of the map to another using it. As a former technical director at Rockstar North later revealed, they couldn't get the ferry system to work properly, so the idea was scrapped. Some modders have already managed to implement it using this recovered model. The Energy 900 motorcycle had a slightly different look. The Turismo featured a spoiler, along with several other minor differences in detail. The Uranus also had a small spoiler, in addition to the large one that occasionally appears in the final game. In the beater version of the Sabre, the rear windows were originally taped up, which emphasized the car's poor condition even more. Buses had a wider variety of color schemes. The civilian version of the Merit contained police equipment. This suggests that the police version of the car might have been modeled first, with the civilian version created based on it later. Players also found many differences in the missions, especially within cutscenes and dialogue. For example, the scene where Roman gets beaten up in the mission Bleed Out was longer. The player was meant to watch Roman take hits for a bit longer before Nico stepped in to help. At the beginning of the mission, Bull in a China shop, Mel had more drunken lines, specifically shouting at a guy in a blue jacket who was laughing hysterically at him.
Ah, fuck you jerk, Mel.
Now I gotta clean that up.
Fuck you, Vicky. I'm fucking soaking here.
Yeah, soaking inside and out.
Fuck you. Fuck all of you. Especially you, Sergey. You worse drunk than me.
In the final version, the scene was shortened and slightly altered, though the original atmosphere remains. In the first mission for Playboy X, Deconstruction for Beginners, Nico originally rings the doorbell at the street entrance before heading inside. In the retail version, the mission simply starts with the elevator doors opening. This actually reminds me of the fact that when these apartments become Nico's property, exiting via the elevator spawns the protagonist directly on the street, skipping the ground floor. It feels as if the first floor was never originally intended to be accessible to the player. The final scene in the mission, Escuela of the Streets, previously used different, often more distant camera angles. Interestingly, you can notice that while we initially see Manny and his cameraman from a distance, the camera's recording interface is already visible on the screen. This was corrected in the final version, where that specific moment is shown from the cameraman's perspective. The scene of Roman's wedding was found in such a rough, work-in-progress state that you can even hear a cue for the actors to begin their performance.
And action.
I now declare you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
In the introductory mission, during the drive from the ship to Roman's apartment, the beta required the player to get out and buy a hot dog. In the retail version, the player isn't forced to make this purchase. The game only explains this mechanic after you leave the safe house. Audio files revealed lines for a character named Susan, who might have been part of a random encounter. Judging by the context, Nico was supposed to urgently help a dying person. Players had already found remnants of a zombie-themed minigame before, but since this dev build surfaced, more details have emerged. For example, there are zombie pickup files, implying weapon and health pickups. Honestly, I would have loved to play a zombie mode like that. Related to this theme, a medical gurney with bloodstains was found, along with several bloodied police corpses in various poses. There were also changes to the characters. Michelle has a different hairstyle and facial features. By the final release, the developers gave her a more polished and pleasant look. Mikhail Faustin's face was slightly different, and he particularly stands out due to a different chest tattoo and outfit. Angie, Jimmy Pecorino's wife, looked noticeably younger. Marnie's face showed no signs of drug addiction. Aiden O'Malley was significantly younger. It seems that by making him older, the developers added a bit more weight to his character's backstory. Kate had little to no makeup and was missing the mole above her upper lip. Her green eyes were darker, and she wore a different outfit. The SWAT model features a radio mounted on the back. Here are a couple of stripper models. One had American flags on her chest, and the other one had some translucent clothing. The beta build contains references to many songs that ultimately didn't make it onto the radio. These differences affect almost every radio station. One of the alternative Mission Complete themes sounded like this. Burger Shot had more accessible rooms. While nothing is known about their interior design, they were likely standard service areas. An early exterior design for the Perestroika Cabaret was also found, featuring a somewhat incorrect Russian inscription. A model for the 69th Street Diner was discovered with transparent windows, which would have allowed a view of Hove Beach. It might have been more interesting than the final version. The abandoned and boarded-up Burger Shot and Duke's was previously functional and accessible to the player. The Ferris wheel was stored in the files in separate parts, which could mean it was originally intended to be functional. In the final version, however, it's a single static model. Players have made a similar assumption regarding the roller coasters, which leads to an interesting thought. The scripted date with Michelle was likely supposed to take place right there at the amusement park. This seems logical, especially considering the dialogue between Michelle and Nico in the mission's opening scene. As a reminder, in the final lore, the amusement park is temporarily closed. There was previously a statue in Algonquin. The Biker Club, which belongs to the Angels of Death and the Lost and Damned, featured a Biker's Grove sign. Meanwhile, the Angels of Death themselves might have had a different building, which appears to be simply abandoned in the retail version. Other graffiti designs were found across Liberty City, which were later replaced by the work of street artists Cope and Indy. A destroyed building was found in the files, likely cut due to its poor placement on the map. This is what the world map looked like at a certain stage of development. What really stands out here is the additional landmass north of Alderney. Colony Island was twice the size of its final version, while Happiness Island, conversely, was half as big. But of course, these are not the only differences in the map. The Cherenkov vodka logo originally had a different image in the center. It possibly depicted something like 3 cooling towers, symbolizing nuclear power, which is closely linked to the Cherenkov effect the vodka is named after. In the retail game, this was replaced by an atom symbol or something similar. Even the animations we're used to had differences in this late beta build. For example, here is the animation of Nico firing a pistol from behind cover. And here is how Nico used to hotwire a stolen car. It looked a bit more rough compared to the final version, but it was certainly more impactful. The animation for pulling a driver out of a car was also changed. Players managed to recover functional models of Bass and Jeremy, complete with facial animations. Previously, these characters were only available as cutscene models. Additionally, a Confederate flag was found in the files. It was likely part of the interior decor for an illegal gun shop. There were different track jackets for Nico and even a backpack. Here is some other clothing that seems to have been decorative. One of these will probably look familiar to you. Although it didn't make it into GTA 4, it appeared later in The Lost and Damned. Interestingly, a TV screen displaying gameplay from Grand Theft Auto 3 was also found in the files. This is very reminiscent of an Easter egg from GTA 3 itself, where internet cafe monitors show screenshots from older games. It's a shame this wasn't included in the retail version of GTA 4. These were some of the most interesting details discovered by players in the 3 weeks since the late beta build leaked. I hope you found this overview interesting. And once again, a huge thank you to everyone researching the game files and sharing their findings with the community. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more GTA content. See you soon.